Hey kiddo, this is Joyson going to help you out with the chapter Physical Changes. Your chapter number 12 in your 5th standard syllabus, Physical Changes. Now with the term physical changes, we always think it is something to do with our physicality. Like for example, the growth of a height or maybe the gain in the body weight. Yes, my dear friends, it is something related to that, but this is about substances in nature. A change in which the original substance remains as it is. A change and remains as it is. How do you justify that? Let's take a small example. Imagine you're having your favorite ice cream and your mama shouts out, "Come here." You feel so irritated leaving that ice cream, but yet you have to go to your mama, and when you come back, the ice cream has already started melting. But don't you eat that leftover or melted ice cream? You love it. And do you think a new substance is formed? The ice cream remains as it is, but only thing that changes is the freezed ice cream is now a molten ice cream. And this is what I'm trying to understand you about physical changes. It's just a change of physical state. Like for example, a solid turning into a liquid. The few examples of physical changes are as follows. The first one is freezing. You hate to drink water, don't you? But the same thing, given in the ice, you can't resist. You just have to munch on an ice cream or maybe your gola. But you love it when water is freezed. Now the second thing is melting. I already gave you a very good example of an ice cream melting. The same thing can be applied to ice. Evaporation. Whenever we see a small puddle of water, what do? We just play around with it, spread it around, and the next thing you know, the whole water has just vanished. How does that happen? That process is called evaporation. The fourth process which we are going to learn today is condensation. What do you understand by condensation? Every time you remove a cold water bottle and keep it out for some time, you always see water droplets on the outside of the bottle. Does the water bottle leak? No. In fact, the water vapor from the air around it condenses on the bottle. That process is called condensation. The fifth process, dissolving. The magic that happens whenever you mix sugar in a liquid. The sugar just vanishes, kaboom. How does that happen? That process is called dissolving. And the sixth process, boiling. Boiling of water, boiling of milk. We always notice that there is a lot of steam being produced. That is boiling. These 6 processes are the main physical changes we see in and around our daily lives. Let's take some few examples. Physical change is only the physical state of the substance changes, not the chemical state, meaning water will remain water even after freezing. Like water when freezed is turned into ice. But the same ice on melting is again turned to water. So do you think a new substance has been formed? No. Water remained water just in the solid state. Now the same liquid turned into solid, again that solid on melting turned into liquid. So it is only the change of physical state. Your glass of water, when you pour it in your ice tray, you freeze it, turns into an ice cube. The same ice cube melts and turns into water. The dilemma of life, isn't it? Now, a solid wax candle. You burn it. What happens to that wax candle? You always see there are drips of that wax coming out of it. And that wax always keeps on falling on the floor. That wax turns into liquid. And that same liquid wax left will turn into solid. When solid wax is heated, we can say when solid wax is heated, it melts into liquid wax. So we've studied freezing and melting. Conversion of solid into liquid is known as melting. Very simple. Now evaporation, the changing of a liquid into a vapor, that is into its gaseous form, is called evaporation. Like for example, water turning into water vapor. Now if you've ever seen water boiling, before that water boils, whenever you keep it in gas, we see there is a small flow of steam coming out of it. That is known as evaporation. Before the state of boiling, when water goes into the air in the form of water vapor, it is known as evaporation. The diagrams or the images might confuse you. We are not talking about boiling. When water boils, it is boiling. Before water boiling is known as evaporation. Next, very simple, when salt water. How do we form salt? How do we get that salt which we eat daily? That salt is got from salt water. Now the salt water is collected in the shallow places. Shallow meaning not deep. Okay? Shallow meaning on the top a little bit of seawater or salty water is added. Now the sun obviously evaporates all the waters, leaving behind only salt. In the second image, now that salt is collected with the help of some instruments, and that same salt is packaged, is cleansed, and is reached to every home in this country or maybe this world. After that, let's understand condensation. Very simple process, the opposite of evaporation. Formation of liquid on cooling of its vapor is called condensation. What happened was the liquid on evaporation turned into vapor. That vapor, when gets condensed, it turns into liquid. Condensation is just cooling of the vapor. So we kept the water on the pot. On the gas, what happened? It got heated up. A lot of evaporation took place. Now that same vapor, when it goes up or maybe is enclosed and kept for cooling, it turns into water. Now that water turned into steam, that same steam will condense to form water. If you've seen something cooking and there is a glass lid over it, we always see the second image. We always see water droplets on the glass lid. And why is that? Because there is condensation taking place. Dissolving. Dissolving is like magic. We take a little salt, we add it into water. What happens? The water dissolves. It magically dissolves the salt, and we have no clue where the salt went. Now after that, if we pour it into a bowl and we leave it to evaporation, we just leave it there. What happens is after some time we'll see that there is a lot of salt left in the bowl. And that, my dear friend, is the same salt that we added. So what happened here? There were two processes. The first process was dissolving. We dissolved the salt into a liquid and it vanished. And then later on we evaporated the liquid, getting back the salt that we added. So dissolving is basically mixing a solution with something and it gets vanished. Now what happens when we boil water? We all know what happens when we boil water. A lot of steam is produced, a lot of bubbles are produced, and that is called boiling. In the same process, boiling, there is nothing new. Boiling, what happens? The water, liquid, turns into steam. There is a physical change. Now the solid can turn into liquid on heating, and when you cool that liquid, it will again turn into a solid. When you heat a liquid, it turns into gas. And when you cool that gas, it will again turn into a liquid. In all these changes, only state of the substance, meaning the solid state, has converted it to the liquid state. The liquid state is converted into the gaseous state and vice versa. Only the physical state of the substance changes and no new substance is formed. original substance can be obtained very, very easily. The three states of water are very simple. Ice, the same bowl left out, it will melt, it will convert itself into water. This water, when boiled, will convert it into water vapor. The first process was melting, then we boiled it and evaporated it at the same time. Evaporation took place when the water was heated, and when it started to boil, the process was known as boiling. So with this, we have studied 6 types of physical changes